Today, let's talk about the protest that happened in Mexico a couple of days ago. I know I'm on the late train, but it's more so about what can we learn from that. As we know, the protest that was happening in Mexico was against tourism, against foreigners that are living or visiting Mexico. The citizens of Mexico are fed up because they feel, and their concern is that they're getting pushed out of their own neighborhood because of high cost, due to the fact that it's becoming a tourist place. So the rent is skyrocketing, the food is skyrocketing. The citizens there of Mexico also have concerns that their culture is changing. As one college student put it, that Mexico's in a transformation. And those are concerns that are valid. It's a change that they're seeing within their own community, especially if they're getting pushed out of their own community because of high rise cost that's happening over there. So those are valid concerns. And the reason why I want to talk about this and bring it up and why I say it's something we can learn from is because our neighboring country is teaching us that they also don't like being pushed out of their own neighborhood. They don't like the fact that Mexico is transforming to something they do not like. They don't like that, in their own words, their culture could be changing. Now I bring this all up because there is also the same concerns here in the United States. But the difference is, and there's a lot of difference between it, but one of them is the fact that if U.S. citizens say something about these mass migrations that happen under Joe Biden, you become racist. You become a Nazi. You become all these characteristics that are negative. Puts a bad look on your character, when in reality you're just concerned. But Mexico's doing it, protested. There were slogans talking about "Unalive gringos," "Speak Spanish," "Your home is an invasion." Those are racial slurs, if you want to look at it that way. I don't look at it that way at all. The way I look at it is just people are fed up of the unfairness. Some of the protesters even said that they feel foreign in their own country. Does any of that sound familiar? Because here in the United States, there's a time, not so long ago, where U.S. citizens did not have access to hotels like the immigrants did. U.S. citizens were busting their ass working, while the immigrants lived for free, rent free, and were given money to be supported. Taxpayers' money. It's not, government doesn't pay for anything. The government gets the money from the U.S. citizens that are busting their ass day in and day out. So those concerns the citizens of Mexico have are the same concerns that the United States citizens have. But it's, like I said, it's different because we're paying for all these mass migrations living. We're paying for everything that they were provided with. In Mexico, as they put it, the gringos, the foreigners, the tourists that were there, they're actually putting money into the economy over there in Mexico. They're putting money in the businesses that are in Mexico, putting money into that community. They might not like it because they can't afford it themselves, but that's the difference. That people were actually investing their money in Mexico. So Mexico was actually profiting off these tourisms, off these foreigners visiting Mexico. Now you come to the United States, we had freeloaders. Not all of them, but majority of all these immigrants that came, crossed over unvetted, just walked right in, were freeloaders. Some were even complaining of the free food that they were having, that they were given to. They were complaining, they were throwing it away. Some were even reselling it. So yes, there's a very big difference. And yes, a lot of US citizens here felt like they were foreigners in their own country because they actually did not a lot of access to schools because illegal immigrants were there, to hotels because illegal immigrants were there. Community buildings were taken over by illegal immigrants. And no US citizen had the right to have access to those buildings. So I would like to say it was much worse here in the United States when we had a bunch of foreigners coming into our country. And in Mexico, they had tourisms. People investing money into the businesses there in Mexico, helping the economy grow in Mexico. So that's why it's a lesson that we can learn, because each country has a preference. Each country and their citizens have concerns about outsiders coming in and making some type of change, whether in their culture or the way the business is being done, or how the rent is being paid, or how people are investing on Airbnbs over there. It's investment in Mexico. And countries like Mexico don't like those kind of changes because it pushes their people out their own neighborhood that have lived there for maybe generations. And then seeing that transformation actually alarms them. So what is the difference between what's happening here in the United States and how people are concerned about the culture changing, about the transformation, about all these foreigners, illegal immigrants coming into the United States and taking over buildings and giving money to them by the taxpayers? Shouldn't our concerns, our worries be valid as well? Shouldn't that be taken into account? But then you got the idiot Latinos that are plotting what's happening in Mexico, saying, good, now you guys know how we feel. First of all, Latinos here, you don't even know what you're talking about, because you're more privileged than a white person at this point. So all this white privilege, all this, that's what they deserve. What are you talking about? What goes through your mind when you think like that? Because when I see things like that from Latinos talking about shit like that, what goes through my mind is, how stupid are you? Some even Latinos are putting their certificates or their degrees and showing I'm a Democrat and look how well educated I am. But they can't even tell you what a woman is. So all that shit doesn't matter. So what we got to learn from this is that, yes, each country has their own policies. Each country and their citizens feel some type of way when their space is being invaded, when there's changes happening within their own community. So I do not badge what's going on in Mexico. I see it as valid concerns and worries, because it's something that they haven't seen in a very long time. And all of a sudden, it's starting to change. Just like we started seeing a lot of things change here within the United States. So how do you think people feel when they're giving free money, when they're giving free living, when they're giving free food? All by taxpayers' money. Feeling straight up like foreigners in our own country. And not only that, being attacked by confused people in our own country. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because there are very big difference of what was happening here in the United States with all these illegal immigrants and freeloading off Americans, and the tourism and the foreigners that are going to Mexico to spend their money in Mexico to help Mexico's economy. The only difference between here in the United States and in Mexico is that here in the United States, we had mass migrations. They were freeloading off taxpayers. Free food, free money, free rent. They denied access to U.S. citizens to public buildings because they had illegal immigrants living there. Anytime a U.S. citizen had any type of concerns or worried of what's going on within their community, they were bashed. They were put into shame. They were called every name in the book. Now we have Mexico. We have people visiting Mexico, putting money into Mexico, putting money into the business in the community. The citizens of Mexico didn't like that. That's fine. They have every right. That's their country. That's their community, especially if they're getting pushed out of their own community. But there's a lot of U.S. citizens here that are also getting pushed out of their own community. We're being denied what should be U.S. citizens' program, such as the benefits that we get. They were denied access to the buildings, taxpayers' buildings that were for U.S. citizens, but were denied access. So the difference between it is how it was being handled and how U.S. citizens were being treated because of their concerns and their worries. While in Mexico, they just didn't like the fact that there was a transformation happening there. They're worried that their culture is going to change, and they're worried that they're not going to have a community to live in no more because it's too high of a price to live in. So for the Latinos applauding that and saying that's what you deserve, you don't know anything. You think you do, but you don't. I don't know anything. But I think with these 4 eyes, I'm seeing things more clear than you are. Then that makes you wrong. Your way of thinking and the way how you applaud of what's happening in Mexico just because U.S. citizens here are concerned of their culture changing, of illegal immigrants having so much benefits when U.S. citizens are actually suffering, living in the streets, or don't have enough to pay rent, food, because illegal immigrants are getting all the benefits and U.S. citizens are getting none of it. So I think it was something that I should bring up, something that we should think about, and something we can all learn from. Because not only United States that doesn't want mass migration of illegal immigrants, other countries don't want it either. Other countries have the same concerns that U.S. citizens have here. That's food for thought. Really think about it. And you still look at it and they're like, that's what these gringos deserve? Then you're a lost cause. Because that's a stupid way of thinking about things.